Hello, I'm Jim Ranahan, an archivist with the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. I want to introduce the Proud Shakespeare project to you, to seek your views on how we can work with LGBTQ plus communities to embed this model of practice, and to seek your help as you see fit to give it. Proud Shakespeare is an integral part of Shakespeare Birthplace Trust's commitment to equality, diversity, inclusion and belonging for our workforce, volunteers and service users. Our ethos is focused on reflecting, celebrating and sharing the lived experience of LGBTQ plus people, both contemporary and historic. We recognise that facing the challenges of today includes understanding and highlighting the injustice and we recognise that facing the challenges of today includes understanding and highlighting the injustice and marginalisation previously endured, whose legacy unfortunately persists today. The subtitle of my talk is Exploring How LGBTQ plus lived experiences are glimpsed and masked through the Trust's collections. Reflecting lived experience, or offering the opportunity for lived experience to be understood through collections, is a cornerstone of collections activity across our archives, library and museum services. We are conscious that for many aspects of lived experiences, including LGBTQ+, our legacy collections currently sometimes mask more than they openly demonstrate. In common with heritage professionals more generally, we are working towards removing such barriers, for instance through Proud Shakespeare, so that people's voices can be heard and their lived experiences understood. Next slide, please. The image on screen is of a photographic print by Joe Cox. Claire Holman is shown as Julia, disguised as Sebastian, in the RSC production of Two Gentlemen of Verona, 1991. This image is selected as indicative of the range of collections available at the Trust, which reflect directly or indirectly on aspects of LGBTQ+ lived experiences through the works of Shakespeare, academic study of them, and their evolving interpretation through performance. The Trust's library contains works relating to queer readings of Shakespeare's texts and other early modern literature, queer adaptations, queer theory, and queer history. Our theatre collections contain resources charting how dramatic exploration of identity and treatment of LGBTQ+ has developed over time. These include visual representations of theatrical responses through photographs and costume designs, as well as insights to directors' visions for exploring LGBTQ+ issues. For instance, the Jazz Age setting for the production on screen, allowing director David Thacker to use visual cues and social references from the Roaring Twenties, likely to be familiar to late 20th century audiences. These library and theatre collections are a strong resource for people wishing to explore LGBTQ+ issues, and are well used by researchers specifically interested in Shakespeare's works and theatre studies. Through Proud Shakespeare, we have learned from contacts within the local LGBTQ+ community that such collections also have a key role in providing self-education and a sense of identity over time for those not focused on Shakespeare. Even in the internet age, direct access to affordable, high-quality reference material remains important, and our collections are well placed to support researchers. The challenge for Proud Shakespeare is to ensure that our specialist credentials do not mask the wider relevance of our resources to audiences whose interest is not primarily in Shakespeare or early modern history. Much of our stock is framed by wider developments in queer studies and LGBTQ+ representation, and we make this material available to all, free of charge, enabling local people to access current research, supporting those who wish to extend their engagement beyond the stock held in public libraries, but who do not have access to university libraries. Proud Shakespeare promotes this resource, including the excellent RSC programme collection, which features commissioned articles relevant to individual productions. These provide accessible and contextualised summaries of theatrical approaches, which are rooted in contemporary discussions of LGBTQ+ experience and identity. Referring back to the image on screen, taken in 1991, it dates from a difficult period for LGBTQ+ communities, enduring then a generally hostile environment. Homophobic prejudices were fueled by misinformation and bigotry around AIDS, HIV, Section 28, and other punitive legislation. For instance, the ban on serving in the UK Armed Forces. Despite this, LGBTQ+ voices were raised in protest and in celebration of individual and community achievements, and scholars and theatre professionals built on earlier work to ensure that LGBTQ+ lived experiences, past and present, were widely understood. Our collections reflect this increased confidence in tackling issues, and our aspiration is that Proud Shakespeare volunteers will help us to map out and communicate this additional feature of our resource. Next slide, please. In 2018, Warwickshire Pride had a stall here in support of the registered charity's mission of celebrating diversity in the community. Shockingly, Pride members were subjected to homophobic abuse, suffering intimidation, threats of violence, and damage to personal and Pride possessions, forcing the organisers to shut down their stall. Note the date, 2018, 30 years after Section 28 de facto demonisation of LGBTQ+ lived experience. The Rother Street hate incident reminded people that despite the more open discourses about LGBTQ+ issues in academic and theatre circles, and the success of the past 3 decades in cultivating supportive environments for such discourse, the old prejudices and bigotry remained a fact of life for very many people, not least in Stratford-upon-Avon. Proud Shakespeare was launched partly as a reaction to the Rother Street incident and as a means of support, ensuring that the local LGBTQ+ voice was not stifled. The Trust assessed how it could meet its ambitions on equality, diversity and inclusion. The Collections Department recognised that its capacity to record and reflect lived experience could also be harnessed. Now, the key elements of Proud Shakespeare are to promote existing collections and, with the assistance of community volunteers and advisors, to review our existing holdings and to seek new collections. Referring back to the image on screen, we at the Trust are clear that the Rother Street incident 2018 is as much part of the Stratford story as King Richard's Charter of 1196 granting the market to the town. We are also aware that sense of place is important to lived experience, and one task the volunteers might like to help us with is to review our extensive collections of photographs, plans and drawings. We seek to identify relevant sites. Are they reflecting or masking locations and memories of community significance? We know from heritage projects elsewhere that certain sites prompt affirming memories, safety and security to meet, entertainment opportunities, personal associations. Others are sites with negative associations, and some sites have associations which alter over time. We hope that positive community associations for Rother Street can be identified to set alongside the awful events of 2018. Next slide, please. So on the screen is my colleague, Jess, who you'll hear from in a short moment. I just want to provide a little bit more context about Proud Shakespeare, and Jess will give her perspective. So the Trust had been working for some time to develop and refine its approach to meeting current needs of diverse communities. 2018 Rother Street focused existing discussions internally, and we met with external partners, including Warwickshire Pride. Our Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Charter referenced accessibility and cultural appropriateness for our services, and Proud Shakespeare was launched at the 2019 Warwickshire Pride Festival at the invitation of the organisers. Until the COVID crisis, a volunteer, Kelsey Ridge, worked with us to identify resources of interest and setting out how existing records might be reinterpreted. Kelsey returned to the USA just before travel closed down, and we are grateful to her and to our other volunteer, Michelle Avon, both of whose contributions will be discussed shortly. Whilst Proud Shakespeare was developing, the regional archive partnership, Archives West Midlands, selected the Trust as the main host for the No Barriers project, a sector-wide initiative to identify and begin to tackle barriers to inclusion for the archive sector, for career choice, service provision, and as reflective of diverse society. Now, we are fortunate to have Jessica Whitfield join us with her commitment to tackle excluding practice and her knowledge of contemporary issues facing and concerns of LGBTQ plus communities. Jess has provided an invaluable external perspective on Trust collections and how they are presented to, or sometimes masked from potential audiences. We are working to incorporate suggestions and advice from Jess into Proud Shakespeare, and we are grateful both to her and to the funders who have enabled us to employ Jess. And the funders are Archives West Midlands, the National Archives, and the Archives and Records Association. We will now hear from Jess. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Hello, I'm Jess. I'm the No Barriers project trainee, and I've been working with Shakespeare's Birthplace Trust since October last year. My role is really looking at barriers for accessing archives, which as a member of the LGBTQ+ community, I find really exciting and rewarding, particularly as SBT's engagement with me has been responsive, deliberate, thoughtful, and balanced. Working alongside Jim, one of my tasks is looking at LGBTQ+ stories within archives, examples of them from other archives, and possible avenues of research within SBT. We know that LGBTQ+ people have always existed, though they may not have used the same terminology as we do today. However, it is not always easy to see this reflected in the records of our past. It is an unfortunate reality that people have had to hide in order to protect themselves. In fact, when searching the archives for LGBTQ+ histories, It is often the ways in which gender identity and sexuality have been persecuted that can provide insights into the LGBTQ+ lived experience. Finding examples in this way still requires knowledge of where to look and what to look for, as well as plenty of time. This is a barrier to access. And this only increases as we look at further avenues of research into the LGBTQ+ lived experience. Research and resource guides are seeking to address this to bring LGBTQ+ stories to light, making them more easily discoverable and explored. Sometimes this means re-examining or reinterpreting information from a 2022 standpoint. Sometimes this means considering how to deal with historic uses of offensive language. And sometimes this means engaging with contemporary collecting, which I'm very much looking forward to learning more about. And I'll pass you back to Jim, who will talk more about this.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jess. And next slide, please. Thank you. The image on screen shows Michelle Avon, one of our volunteers, with the statue of Hermaphroditus located in the Bancroft Gardens, Stratford-upon-Avon. This is a location with personal significance to Michelle as a trans person whose lived experience in Stratford is compelling. Michelle is a former trustee of Warwickshire Pride and has supported Proud Shakespeare from the outset. We are delighted to receive this photograph as part of the initial deposit of the papers of Michelle Avon, LGBTQ+ advocate. Michelle commissioned a series of photographic prints reflecting her identity and highlighting the importance of sense of place in her personal story. And some of the photographs include Shakespeare's Birthplace, as Michelle worked for many years with the Birthplace Trust. Michelle has kindly agreed to provide oral history recordings for her collection, as well as documentation relating to her activism. And we look forward in due course to sharing this contemporary LGBTQ+ lived experience with researchers. Both Michelle and I hope that her example will inspire others to engage with Proud Shakespeare as volunteers. And if they gain confidence in our commitment to them, as Michelle has done, eventually to deposit or donate material reflecting their own lived experiences. And we just hear now a few words from Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all today. My take on this is Stratford in some areas is seen as very a chocolate box sort of a town, has to conform to an image. So it's absolutely great to see such an organisation as SBT question themselves, open themselves to community. No doubt it's been something that hasn't been dealt with before, and I think it's very brave to take it on and be prepared to ask the questions and push forwards. As an incomer into Stratford, only about 5 years now, in some places seen as the token northerner, which is good for myself. We call a spade, not a spade a teaspoon. Many layers to Stratford. The library here just on the road from where we are in Henley Street, actually stocks books LGBT. Much more awareness in the community that wouldn't have been there 10 years ago, 20 years ago would have been unheard of. Everything is a much easier journey for people starting on the journey now than people who are more senior like myself. We have a bright future to look forward to.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Before I move to the next slide, please be aware that it contains an offensive and uncontextualised term. It is included in this presentation to demonstrate the situation sometimes encountered with legacy catalogue descriptions for collections and the need to tackle this. Thank you. If you could have the next slide now, please. Thank you. Thank you. Just to confirm, the text on screen is taken from a legacy entry on our online catalogue, which is Discover Shakespeare. I direct you to the final word in the description. This is displayed today as found in the catalogue, and please be assured that the entry has since been updated to demonstrate that the Trust does not condone such uncontextualised terms. We are actively addressing the issue for this specific entry and across our catalogue entries, and we are developing case notes to share with fellow professionals. Now, this forms part of the Proud Shakespeare approach, and where necessary, we're tackling past prejudice and insults directly where we're able to adjust legacy catalogue entries, and indirectly where we'll provide appropriate context for and warning of offensive, inaccurate or otherwise problematic terms contained for the records themselves. And in this, we're following models of working developed by the Queering Glamorgan initiative in Wales, and identifying biased and offensive language in catalogues project from Leeds University. This is an area where volunteers could ensure Proud Shakespeare meets the needs of communities, as with over 250,000 catalogue entries, and that figure rises every week, we cannot check legacy entries as quickly and as comprehensively as we would wish. Now, I'm running out of time, so I just want to signal very quickly one of the key areas that we identify, and through Queering Glamorgan has been identified as a major area of research, are court records, where that may be the only record relating to a member of the LGBTQ plus community, but court records for crimes no longer criminalised. And if you want to ask me questions on that later, I'll expand on that. The key thing is the Trust, as with many other archive holding institutions, has a lot of court records, in our case dating primarily from the 19th century and earlier. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. And the shot on screen now is from the cover of our it's the cover of our source guide for resources, and the revised version of that is being launched tonight on our website, and I think we'll be providing links to the audience about that. Thank you. And next slide, please. There are some useful links here, and they'll be provided for you directly. Thank you very much for bearing with me.
Jim, and indeed Jess, thank you very much indeed. Really fascinating material. Few minutes of questions, not very long, but Jim, just a quick question about the records of the records, as it were.
Yes.
The sense that the record you showed us, will that be preserved in any way to illustrate what things used to be like in the archive? When someone comes to find the new record that's replaced it, will they be alerted to the fact that there had been an earlier one?
Yes, thank you for asking that. Yes, we're working out currently with peers across the archive profession the most appropriate way to do that, but we will, as a matter of course, record that an intervention by an archivist has happened. So the existing or the details of the replaced record or the replaced catalogue entry will be preserved, and it's how best to communicate that to researchers, and that's what we're actively looking into at the moment. And the project that I mentioned, the offensive language project at Leeds University, tackles that head on, so we're hoping to get some peer-reviewed guidance on that.
Thank you. A quick question for Jess as well, if I may. Is Jess there? Hi, Jess. Hey, can you give us an example of one life that you found in the archive that's especially fascinated you?
Okay, so today I'm actually in Stratford, so I've been looking at some of the Mary Corelli collections that we have. So I've been doing some research, and it's really nice just to see the actual collections that we hold instead of just looking at them on screen, and just looking more at her life and her companion's life, Birth of Ivor. So that's been lovely.
Thank you very much. We're going to draw this little session to a close because we're going to check out and check in again to the next session, which will be with Cheryl Morgan. And just to ask you, please, that if you felt like making a donation to the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, then please do. We'd love you to help us out in that way. www.shakespeare.org.uk/donate. We'd be very grateful for your support in these difficult times. Thank you to Jim. Thank you to Jess. Thank you to Michelle in absentia. And I look forward to welcoming you again in a couple of minutes' time. And also to say the session was recorded for video, and they'll be available after the session too. That was mentioned in the chat. Thank you. Bye.